Good morning, Father President, Archbishop Rhodey, graduates, family, and friends. It is my pleasure to welcome and introduce our commencement speaker. Patrick Balthrop is a 1979 graduate of Spring Hill College, where he obtained a bachelor's degree in biology. He also has an MBA from Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management. Since walking down the Avenue of the Oaks, he has built a distinguished career as a business leader and innovator in the medical device and life science industry. For the past 7 years, he has been CEO and president of a leading company in the life sciences industry, Luminex Corporation. During his tenure at Luminex, the company's revenue has grown at a compounded rate of 30% per year, which has resulted in Luminex being named by Forbes magazine as one of America's fastest growing technology companies for 2008, 2009, and 2010, joining companies such as Apple and Google on a very elite list. Over the past several years, Luminex has developed and introduced several groundbreaking technologies and products. The company's innovation has recently been recognized when Luminex was honored with the Prix Gallion Award, the industry's equivalent to the Nobel Prize. Given recent events in the world of business, it is just as important to note that Luminex is ranked in the top 10% of all publicly traded companies for the quality of its corporate governance. Pat and his wife, Mary Therese, who also attended Spring Hill, have been honored for their community involvement and philanthropy by organizations such as the Human Rights Campaign and the Howard Brown Health Center in Chicago, which named them Friends for Life, an honor shared by Mayor Richard Daley and tennis great Billie Jean King. 2 years ago, as perhaps some of our graduates remember, Patrick came to campus and spoke at the Student Organization Leadership Award ceremony and to a select group of students at an ethics and leadership luncheon. Patrick's comments were so well received at that time, I am thrilled that he has joined us again today to speak to all of our graduates. Please join me in extending a warm welcome back to the Hill for Patrick Balthrop.
Father Salmi, faculty, distinguished guests, friends, family, graduates, I'm honored and thrilled to have been invited to speak to you today. If I'm successful delivering my remarks, I will have followed the advice of Franklin Roosevelt, who said a successful speech needs to follow the 3 B's. Be sincere, be brief, and be seated. But let me start with a hearty congratulations. Today is a celebration. You have a lot to be proud of. All of us are here today to celebrate with you because this is your day. For my part, I plan to tell you a couple of stories which I promise I'll try to make relevant and interesting as you embark on life's journey. The first story starts when I was just a sophomore in high school. I was 15. Now I'm sure you remember those days. I was about to get my driver's license. I wasn't a kid anymore, but I wasn't an adult yet either. I had more independence, but also more responsibility. And of course, when you're 15, you live each day knowing that it's not very likely that anyone is going to listen to what you have to say. So one day, I found myself falsely accused of what was a major offense, smoking cigarettes on my high school campus. At my school, before the principal could suspend me, and he was going to suspend me, he had to meet with one of my parents who would then accept my punishment and take me home. When the school called my mom, she didn't answer. Now this was back in the Stone Age, there were no cell phones back then. So the principal calls my dad at work. My dad has to drop everything to come to the school. So I think you'd agree at this point things are going really great. Okay, so I'm sitting in the principal's office. It's not my first time there, by the way, thinking about how bad my punishment is going to be. After agonizing over my fate for what seemed like hours, my father shows up. He walks in and just looks at me. You can imagine that look, right? Doesn't say a word. I follow him into the office of the principal, who explains the accusation and the process, that a teacher has accused me of smoking, that once they go through the steps I'll be suspended, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I'm sitting there totally powerless. My dad listens carefully, and after the principal finishes, my dad speaks up. He calmly says to the principal, "Father, did you see Pat smoking?" The principal says, "No." He turns to the dean. Same question, same answer. He then turns to the teacher who accused me and asks him, "Was Pat smoking?" The teacher says, "Yes, he was." Then to my total surprise, my dad turns to me and says, "Son, were you smoking?" I look at him, first of all, surprised and shocked that anybody in that room wanted to hear what I had to say, and I'm somehow able to manage a firm, "No, sir." Then my dad turns to the teacher and says, and I'll paraphrase, use his language given today's solemn occasion, "You, sir, are a liar." Then my dad turns to the principal and says, "Father, I think we're finished here. I have to get back to work, and I'm sure Pat has to get to class." Now, when you're 15, an experience like that, a stark moment of truth, stays with you forever. The funny thing is that my dad, a proud member of the Spring Hill class in 1940, never remembered that incident. What he did remember is that he knew I was no angel, but he also knew that I was accountable and that I wouldn't lie to him. The reason why I tell you that story is because Spring Hill was in the principal's office with us that day. My dad was a man of integrity, and he was certainly principled when he arrived at Spring Hill. But he would tell you that as a young man, his 4 years under these oaks honed his critical thinking as he made his personal pursuit of wisdom. That pursuit led to his dedication to social justice, even in its smallest form, like a 15-year-old being falsely accused. My dad died just 3 weeks ago at the age of 91. He loved Spring Hill his entire life because he knew that you may leave Spring Hill, but Spring Hill will never leave you. My second story occurred years later. At this point, I'm in my early 30s. The company I was working for transferred me and my wife, Mary Therese, and our 3 kids to Hong Kong. As part of my job, I was negotiating a business deal with the Minister of Health for a Southeast Asian country to supply medical devices and products to his government hospitals and labs. And after having several meetings in his office in his country, he flew to Hong Kong for a final meeting, just the 2 of us, over lunch. I was really excited because this deal was big and could make a huge difference in my career. So as the waiter removes the last plate, the minister turns to me and tells me in so many words that my company and I can win this deal as long as we agree to a few special conditions. As I listened carefully to his conditions, I applied some of that unbiased reason you guys have heard about, which made me realize that he would be diverting funds to himself, but doing that in a clever way that would almost surely pass any financial audit or legal review. In other words, he asked me for a bribe. But he did that in a way that would almost surely go undetected. Now, way before that lunch, I had already done the math, and I knew what the deal would mean to me in terms of my career, revenue, and profit to the company, and the bonus that I was trying to earn. So there I sit, a young man, building a career. I had 3 kids who I needed to be able to afford to send to college someday, maybe this one. So the stakes were high. I had to respond to his proposal, and I had to do it right then and right there. I could agree to his terms. I could enhance my career. I could make more money. The company would benefit, and no one would likely know about those special conditions. I told him no, and I walked away. Not because I would have been violating U.S. law, although I would have, and not because I would have been violating my company's policies, which I also would have. I refused his offer because of what's important to me. Make no mistake, in that moment of truth, at the table, over lunch, Spring Hill was with me. I had left Spring Hill, but Spring Hill had not left me. Over the years, you'll also encounter situations like these, moments of truth. in which you will have to rely on the principles that you have been learned and have been shaped, at least in part, by Spring Hill and by the people behind me and seated in the audience. A Spring Hill education doesn't teach you what to think. Rather, it teaches you how to think. Spring Hill teaches you to know what to stand for and to be held accountable. And I can tell you, in the real world, these are not just concepts in a textbook. They are all too real. Now, rarely do any of us encounter situations that are big enough to affect society as a whole, the society where we're supposed to be making a difference every day. In the news recently, we've seen people stand up for what's right in places like Egypt and Tunisia and Libya. They placed themselves at risk. Some even lost their lives. But few of us ever have moments of truth in which we have to make a choice like that, a choice between life and death. Most of the time, our choices are not of global significance. Notice that I did not say they were insignificant. To you, each moment of truth will be significant and very personal. So, in your moment of truth, how will you react? What will you do when you encounter bigotry and homophobia? What if that sexist or homophobe or racist is in a position of influence or power? What if that person's your boss or the parents of the person you want to spend the rest of your life with? What will you do when you face an ethical dilemma? I'm afraid there are no easy answers, but Spring Hill teaches you, has taught you, to do what is right and just, to be faithful to those whom you love and to yourself. When you encounter your personal moments of truth, you and only you will be accountable for the actions that you take or don't take. Over the past decade or so, business-related events have dominated a lot of the news. Since that's the world I live in, if you're like me, those news stories can be discouraging. And I'm sure that you may have wondered if the entire world, the world that you're about to enter, is corrupt. Does an honest woman or man really have a chance in today's world? Is ethical behavior ever rewarded? For that matter, are the unethical ever held accountable? Whatever happened to that old adage we heard on the playground that cheaters never win? Lately, it seemed that cheaters may not always be winning, but they're not always losing either, right? Right? Wrong. I say wrong because it depends on your definition of winning. You have to decide what winning means. Is it making as much money as possible regardless of how you make it? Are you prepared to sacrifice your principles for career advancement? Are you ready to jeopardize the relationships of those whom you love and who love you back to gain material wealth or to satisfy your ambition? A good guide for you to use in situations like these is to picture yourself on your deathbed. Ask yourself who you want in the room with you on your deathbed. If the decisions you make always take care of the needs of those people first and will make those people proud of you, you will always make the right decision. As you leave Spring Hill today and head into the world, you may not know what the next several years hold. You may not have a detailed plan. I know I didn't when I walked down the Avenue of the Oaks years ago. The day I graduated, I was married with a baby on the way, and I had a job, but it didn't pay very well. Trust me when I tell you that we were poor by anyone's standard. When we found 50 cents on the sidewalk one day, 50 cents, my wife and I had a long discussion about whether to use it for gas or to do a load of laundry in the laundromat. As I've proceeded down life's avenue, if I've achieved anything, I've done so not in spite of experiences like those, but because of them, and because of what I learned here at Spring Hill. No matter what avenue you take, whether you're rich or poor, be assured that you will encounter your own moments of truth. You will encounter liars and cheats. You will face bigotry, sexism, homophobia, racism. You will encounter a lack of ethics and corruption in many forms. I'm afraid that I can't give you any words of wisdom about how to handle each situation. What I can do, though, is to challenge you to remember what you've learned here at Spring Hill, which is you always have a choice whether to act, whether to stand up and speak up for what's right. When you face those moments of truth, my advice is to remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." It's important to remember Dr. King's words because there's a problem. You see, just like my dad had to decide how to handle the situation when I was falsely accused, and just like I had a choice to make when I had an official ask me for a bribe, you almost never see these situations coming. They always take you by surprise. And often you have to decide how to handle them in a very short period of time, sometimes a matter of seconds. That sounds pretty scary. But you don't need to be scared. I can tell you that when you find yourself in one of those moments of truth, when you encounter injustice and intolerance and unethical behavior, just listen to that quiet voice that you have, the voice whose message has been refined and developed in these buildings at Spring Hill. Fall back on the strength of the principles that you've learned under these mighty oaks over the past few years. Make no excuses and accept no excuses. You have yourself to live with, and you have to hold yourself accountable. Spring Hill is indeed a special place. The special nature of Spring Hill has been evident to me for as long as I can remember. I come from a three-generation Spring Hill family. My father was a graduate of Spring Hill, and 3 of my uncles went here. I met the love of my life, Mary Therese, just a few feet from here when we were both students at Spring Hill. In fact, I kissed her for the very first time under a tree, not unlike these, not far from where I stand, just off the golf course, and I hope before I leave we can have a reenactment. For my generation, I have siblings and first cousins and a brother-in-law and dear friends who have attended Spring Hill. From your generation, I have a niece sitting among you who is graduating with you today. So the Hill and all that it embodies has been part of my life and my family since way out before I was born. Therefore, I can say with some confidence that the principles you've learned here will stay with you for the rest of your life. Previous generations of Spring Hillians have achieved great things. My father's generation saved the world from tyranny, passed civil rights legislation, and put a man on the moon. So far, my generation has created the digital world in which we all live, continued the fight for equality, and mapped the human genome. Your achievements and those of your generation will surely be even more exciting. But as previous Spring Hill alumni have shown by example, I ask you to consider that just as important as what you achieve is how you achieve it. Do not be discouraged when you face life's challenges. Embrace them because they will make you better. Today, as you walk from beneath these majestic oaks to celebrate, as their branches reach down to embrace you, hold your head high as you commence the exciting next chapter of your life. Celebrate your terrific achievement. I know that you'll make a difference in the world, and I wish you good luck. But I ask you to remember what Thomas Jefferson said about that. I'm a great believer in luck, and I find the harder I work, the more good luck I have. Congratulations, and always, always know that you may be leaving Spring Hill, but Spring Hill will never leave you. Thank you.